Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Power Hungry Podcast. I'm Robert Bryce. On this podcast, we talk about energy, power, innovation, and politics, and I'm pleased to welcome my guest, Julie Kuntz. She is a native of Worth County, Iowa, and she is a member of Concerned Residents of Worth and Winnebago counties. Julie, welcome to the Power Hungry Podcast.
Thank you very much, Robert.
So I warned you that guests introduce themselves on this podcast, so I've given a slight bit of information about you, but if you don't mind, if you arrive somewhere and you have about a minute or so to introduce yourself, please go ahead.
Right. As an avid listener to the podcast, I was prepared for this. So, I listened to the podcast, and what can I say? I'm not an author. I'm not the director of anything. But what I am is I'm a very proud fifth generation Iowa farm girl. My roots run deep here. In fact, my great-great-grandfather was the first to strike a claim in Union Township, Worth County, Iowa. My sister and I now own the family farm that's been in our family for 111 years. I guess you could say, Robert, I'm kind of like the boots on the ground. I'm part of the grassroots organization that's working diligently here to stop the onslaught of industrial wind over our rural communities. We do that by a lot of ways. We write letters, we make brochures, we go to supervisors meetings, we travel down to Des Moines. I've been involved with this since 2018. It was at that time that I happened upon Invenergy at my 85-year-old mother-in-law's house with contract in hand. My husband and I farm near Grafton. Grafton is located in Worth County, Iowa, as you said, very small rural community. We're in the north central part of the state. We actually border Minnesota. I would also mention I'm a pharmacist by occupation, graduate of the University of Iowa. And I say that because I think my scientific background enables me to analyze data, analyze study design, and better understand the inherent problems, physics problems associated with wind and solar, the intermittent diffuse energy source that they are. So that's what I got for you.
Okay. Thanks. And before we started recording, you said you were nervous, and please don't be. We're just chatting here, and I, as I told you before we started recording, I only have people on the podcast who I think are interesting. If they have a big following on Twitter or whatever, they're famous, that's fine. But we met in Albert Lea, Minnesota last August. You came up to Albert Lea when I was presenting my report, Not in Our Backyard, which I wrote for the Center of the American Experiment. And you were gracious enough to come up with a friend of yours, and we met there and talked.
You had people come from Missouri to hear you speak there.
That's right. What were their names? I know their names.
Carrie March?
Carrie March and Nikila Blessing.
Yes.
Yeah, that was very flattering. They came all the way from it wasn't King County. I know they're in north central or northern Missouri, but nevertheless, you mentioned Invenergy, and this is one of the main reasons why I wanted to have you on now, is that you emailed me a few days ago pointing out that it was on May 13th that a subsidiary of Invenergy called Worthwhile Wind sued Worth County, Iowa, the Worth County Board of Supervisors, and in a petition for declaratory judgment. And that caught my attention because, as you know, I've been documenting this effort by big wind and big solar companies to put more wind and solar in rural communities and the backlash that it's engendered. Tell me about that moment, though, in 2018, where you first encountered Invenergy on your family's farm and trying to get your folks to sign on to a lease agreement. Was that what they were doing?
Right. So that's how Invenergy works. That is the company that I'm most familiar with. I can't speak to how other wind companies work, but they have very much what I call stealth tactics. They focus mainly on absentee landowners, older, bigger landowners. So yes, I didn't know much about it, to be truthful, although it was shocking to find someone at my mother-in-law's. She lives in the city. She lives in Mason City, to find them at her home, visiting with her. That's concerning. And we, of course, have a huge older population in Iowa, and I find it very concerning that they would focus on them before having any public meetings. In fact, Invenergy never has a public meeting. They like to do everything person to person and very privately, and I find that very concerning. So yes, I came there, and Invenergy was the land agents were there meeting with her, and she and I told them it's best to meet with her son, my husband. And then when I came home, lo and behold, land agents had been here at my farm, and he had a draft easement agreement with him, which he left with us. And we weren't opposed to it, but we weren't knowledgeable about it. And that's when we started to learn and read the agreement. And that's what started my activism in all of this.
So 4 years ago now.
Correct. So we are landowners. So we were,
If you don't mind me interrupting, so about how much land do you own?
We have about now I have inherited some land from my mom and dad. So it's about 1,200 acres.
And what do you farm? What do you grow?
Corn and beans.
And any livestock? Any other keep animals?
Yeah, not right now, but we're from Grafton, and Grafton area is known for turkeys. And my father-in-law was one of the original turkey raisers. So we used to have a fair number of turkeys, but we've gotten out of that business.
So corn and soybeans right now.
Correct.
And well, so I just have to ask this before obviously we're talking about wind energy and solar energy, but what's the situation with fertilizer? How are you doing on just getting, because I mean, I hear about soaring price of fertilizer, diesel fuel, herbicides. Give me just a quick vignette, if you're a quick update on how it's going. And are you out of corn? I've talked to some farmers who said they're not planting corn, they're planting soybeans because of the issues of fertilizer availability. What's your strategy, and what's been your experience?
So we've really cut back on our farming as my husband has gotten older. So we lease out or rent out a lot of our land. We still had diesel fuel in the tanks from last year. So we're not going to have that when we go to harvest, but in putting in all of our crop, we were still using the old price diesel fuel. They're out right now today putting nitrogen on, and you pay the inputs, and right now prices are good. My husband's an excellent marketer, so
the prices for grains are good, but
right.
but the price of fertilizer is much higher as well, right?
Oh, you betcha. Yeah, it's going to eat into our profits big time. But
2x what it was a year ago, 3x. Give me an idea.
I can't tell you that. I don't know for sure.
Oh, because you're more on the leasing side now rather than farming yourself.
Well, and I'm the pharmacist. Okay. That's my husband's job. So although I did quit being a pharmacist for a while and became a pharmacist, FARM. I ran the combine, and so I have to get my husband down here to talk to you in more detail on that. But it's, as you know, it's hurting everybody everywhere.
Gotcha. And you're a clinical pharmacist, so you practice in Mason City then?
I do. I work in a doctor's office, mainly with type 2 diabetics, but I work in a doctor's office in Mason City part-time.
Gotcha. So back to Invenergy and the wind energy efforts that are in Iowa. As I've been, I know you're familiar because we've been in touch. I keep the renewable rejection database. We're up to 332 communities rejected or restricted wind since 2013 now. I've added some new entries. Why is Iowa? I mean, I keep hearing over and over from different parts of Iowa, also Wisconsin, Ohio, that these are really battleground states for what I think is a land grab. That's what I think. I think this whole thing is a major land grab by big corporations in rural America. Is that what it is? Am I misapprehending what's going on? And is that why there's been such a backlash, particularly in those three states?
So there's like 6,000 wind turbines in Iowa. I don't know exactly to me, it's all about the production tax credit, which ironically,
the federal subsidy that the wind industry gets.
Yeah. Yeah. And, as there get to be more and we experience it more and they become bigger, and the negative effects of the wind turbines are growing along with the size of the wind turbines. I think the backlash is more. And people learn from their neighbors. I think that was a big thing in my area, where the farmers here learned from the farmers of the Barton wind farm, Avangrid Renewables. So they learned from them about the problems there are with drainage, the problems with aerial spraying, the problems with shadow flicker, what it's like to live around them. So my farmers here in my area went up to the fertilizer plant and talked to their neighbors, talked to their family members, talked to their friends who said, don't do it.
And it's because well, you mentioned shadow flicker, and has it changed the moisture patterns? That's one of the other things that I've heard. The proponents say,
Yeah.
oh well, you can farm in between these these projects and so on, but from a lot of what I've heard is that it actually changes the moisture patterns in and around the turbines themselves because they change the airflow. Has that been one of the issues as well?
I can't say that we've been able to document that or say that. What I would say is the major thing for the farmers around here, we're in northern Iowa, and drainage tile is key up here. Drainage tile is very, very expensive. And if what your neighbor does on drainage tile affects your farm, that's a big deal.
And drainage tile, this
problems.
is a new term for me, and I've talked with other people in Iowa about this, in Madison County, in fact. But so drainage tile, that is where you level out a section of land and then to assure the water doesn't run off too quickly. Can you explain that quickly?
No, drainage tile. I should have had my husband come down here
Okay,
and get
all
on
right.
this podcast with you. So you trench in tile. It's generally about 4 feet under the ground. So it's a round drainage tile. They come in different sizes of sections, 8-inch drainage tile. It might then tie into a bigger main tile.
So it's it's a pipe.
Yep, it's a plastic pipe.
Oh, okay.
And then
Okay, gotcha.
and the
All
water
right.
goes in there, and then it goes into a main, and then it drains out into whether it's a drainage ditch or another area. So this area is very, very heavy soil, and it doesn't drain very well. So we've got to get that water away so that our crops do better.
I see. Because you don't want the ground too wet. So you want that water.
Right.
You want that. I gotcha. So and the turbines and also from what I understand, the solar projects, they mess up the tiling. They mess up the drainage flow.
Yeah, I haven't gotten a lot into solar, but yes, I have heard problems with that. I have also heard with solar even more concerns about the heat generated by those solar panels. And I know that the Iowa Farm Bureau has definite concerns about that, as well as the amount of land use from solar. Worth County, from my understanding, has 7,000 acres signed up for solar. That's huge. Think of how many farmers that's going to take land away from that might be, renting that land. Think of all of the, subsequent businesses, whether it's the fertilizer plant, the seed people, and whatever that's going to take business away from. So I haven't gotten involved a lot with solar, but that's definitely another concern.
Well, is it true that, and from what I've seen and been reading and people contacting me, and I get a lot of people who contact me about, oh, well, help me out on this, or here's another entry for the database, that there's been a shift, and that it used to be that the big wind, renewable companies, NextEra, Mid-American, Avangrid, were only focused on wind. Now they're much more focused on solar. And there's a battle with Invenergy in Dane County, Wisconsin, that I can talk about. But have you seen that, or have you been mainly focused on you said you've been mainly focused on the wind stuff?
I have been mainly focused on wind, but there's solar too. I know down by Cedar Rapids, and I think you've talked to some of those people as well. It's both. I think for some people, solar seems less intimidating because it's not the huge, gigantic towers. Again, people need to get informed. An informed citizen is the wind or the solar people's worst nightmare.
Say that again. An informed citizen is the wind industry's worst nightmare.
You betcha. So I actually, so there was a wind installation, this one I was telling you about, that Invenergy was trying to get in my neck of the woods, in my area of Worth County. And we worked hard against this.
And what project
And
was that?
it was called Worthwhile Wind. Okay. There's two. There was Worthwhile Wind 1 or the South one, which was me. And now they're currently working on the Worthwhile Wind North. And that is the one where the lawsuit is currently going on.
Right.
The one in my area, they quit. They stopped. They drew away from it. They will not tell you it's because they couldn't get enough people to sign up, but that is why it is. Because we got busy down here. We contacted every landowner in the area. We had landowners from Bolivia to Fifth Avenue, New York, to New Zealand, Pennsylvania. We contacted them all. We developed a brochure. We told them why we were against it, what some of the negatives were. And so they couldn't get enough people to sign. I actually, Invenergy offered me a 3-mile no-build perimeter around my home in return for me sitting down and shutting up. I refused
Was that a
to sign
contract?
that.
Did they give you a document that said that?
Yes, I have that document.
Will you share it with me?
I certainly will. Yes, I also received a correspondence with Michael Blazer, their chief legal advisor, that he sent me 5, I feel, intimidating emails asking me who I presume to represent. So that's kind of the way that this company works is by intimidation. I feel bullying tactics, and I think that's what they're doing here with Worth County in this project that they're working on now. And as they're threatening, well, they're not threatening, they are actually now petition the court for Worth, so that they don't have to follow the regulations, follow the process of Worth County developing a wind ordinance.
Well, let me interrupt if you don't mind, because just a quick background for people who aren't listeners aren't familiar with Invenergy. This is the from what I've read and what I understand, this is the biggest privately held renewable energy developer in the country, and therefore likely in the world. It is controlled by a man named Michael Polsky, who is Forbes puts his net worth at something like $1.5 billion.
Right.
Invenergy, I sent Invenergy several questions asking them about the lawsuit, about how many turbines they were planning to put in Worth County, how much money they've spent in Iowa, what they expect, how much tax credit how many tax credits they've or in value of the tax credits they've received, and also about the other litigation that they've been involved in, because they were sued in Oregon in 2013 in a nuisance lawsuit over noise. So this issue is interesting for a lot of reasons, because in their document, in their petition for declaratory judgment, they object to the issue of noise limits on the on wind projects in the proposed requirements that Worthwhile's now, or that the Worth County rather is now considering.
Right.
So let me just follow up on the Invenergy part of this, because you've talked about the company and how they behave. So if somehow I could arrange for you to meet Michael Polsky, who was a subject of a very flattering piece in Forbes last year, if you could talk to Polsky, what would you tell him?
When this first started out, I was so frustrated and I couldn't get anybody to talk to me from Invenergy. I begged and begged them to have public meetings, and they refuse. So I actually called Invenergy, and when the robot says, who do you want to speak to? I said, Michael Polsky.
You did? How long ago was this?
This would be back in 2018. And I left him messages, and I invited him to come out to our Century Farm. And I said, I'll make you supper. We'll have Iowa sweet corn. I would like to visit with you. I would like to show you this beautiful rural area, tell you of our concerns, and tell him about our vested rights, about what we've got in our family farms, what we've got in the value of our residents, and how we value the quality of life. I didn't get a response from him. Did you get a response from Invenergy?
Well, I sent the email 3 times, and then on the third time, just yesterday, I sent it to the same woman, Beth Connolly, twice, and she didn't reply. So then I sent it to her a third time and copied the main media outlet, and then so she then quickly replied and said, "Thanks for your notes. We don't comment on pending actions." So no answer to any of my questions. Just we don't comment. But what would you tell him? I mean, you tried to speak to him, but what would you say to him now, especially given this May 13th lawsuit against the county where you live? What would you tell Michael Polsky?
Well, they're claiming vested rights in this worthwhile the North project. And again, I would tell him, we as landowners, as residents, we have vested rights in this, and that it's such a hot topic, and people seem so divisive about wind energy, but some people say that wind energy has a place, it's just not here. I don't agree with that. In my estimation, wind energy doesn't have a place anywhere. It doesn't make sense from a physics point of view. And I guess I would try to explain that to him, but I think he pretty much knows it. He's not, I really don't feel that Invenergy is doing this to save the world. I know they're not doing it to be good to Worth County. They're doing it for the bottom dollar. That's what they're doing it for. And maybe I guess I would say to him, when is enough, Mr. Polsky? Don't you have enough money? I guess that's one thing I would say to him. But I would be very nice about it.
You are from Iowa, after all. That's
Iowa
part
nice.
of that. That's one that's one of the requirements.
I think we're a little bit too Iowa nice.
Take your wind turbines somewhere else, please.
Yeah. There you go. But no, I don't want them anywhere else. I don't think they make sense anywhere. I just don't. If they don't make sense, they don't make sense.
Well, I'm a longtime critic of the wind business, and we don't have to go into all that. But so so tell me about the lawsuit. Were you surprised that they would go ahead and as a quick bit of background for people who haven't been following this, the wind industry has on a regular basis now, and I'm specifically NextEra, the world's biggest producer of renewable energy, Mid-American Energy, which is a subsidiary of one of the biggest corporations in the world, Berkshire Hathaway, and now Invenergy, have sued towns across the country, in NextEra, particularly Hinton, Oklahoma, but in Iowa, even just in the last few months, Mid-American Energy sued Madison County, Iowa, to effectively force the county to take turbines that the county didn't want. And I see the same thing now in Worth County, because it's clear that the Board of Supervisors have made it clear, well, one, they passed the moratorium in April of 2021, right, which expires in July of 2022, that there is a sentiment widespread in the county, as in Madison County, that we don't want any more turbines here. Go somewhere else. So were you surprised? Just a bit of a digression there, but are you surprised that Invenergy sued?
So I'm also going to add to that. So in Hardin County, Iowa, RWE, they claimed vested rights. Okay. That lawsuit was recently dropped. It was scheduled to go to trial on April 6th, but that was dropped. Interestingly, in Page County,
RWE dropped the suit, right?
Correct.
And they dropped it. I thought the timing on that is important, because that happened just a few weeks after Diane Fitch, the supervisor in Madison County, switched her position after Mid-American sued the county and changed and said, okay, we relent and we'll let them put in more turbines.
But that's Madison County. This is Hardin.
Right. But Fitch changed her position shortly before RWE dropped its lawsuit. So the sentiment from other people in Madison County was that if only Fitch had hung on, that the Mid-American might have done the same as RWE and just simply gone away.
Okay. Yes. Good point. Now in Page County, Iowa, another very rural area, there, conversely, the residents have threatened to sue the supervisors for not protecting them.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So tell me about that, because one of the things that I've heard over and over in different communities across the country, and I've interviewed dozens of rural landowners and people like you, and frankly, and I'm just telling you the truth, it's a lot of people like you, mostly women, a lot of farm women who are working from their kitchen tables, and this is their cause because they're forced into it. But
Right.
how has this controversy affected relationships within the community in Worth County? What has it done? Has it been divisive?
Yes, yes, it's polarized people, but it's, you can look at that in different ways. I've gotten to know people and gotten close to people, so um, it has been a polarizing issue. It's very sad because in some instances, there are family members pitted against each other.
Mm.
So the way that these companies work, how the way they come in, um, it's not been good. It's not been good. So yeah, it's not been good.
So then people stop talking to each other. They're not friendly anymore when they see him in town. The friendships ruptured. Is that what you're getting to?
There have been some cases of that. I have felt at certain meetings and that at certain gatherings of people that um, most people we can talk about it and agree to disagree. But there's a few times where people that I know that have wind turbines, and I've been very, of course, vocal against it, that I've been shunned by them, if you will. Doesn't bother me, but if it was a family member or something, that would certainly be a hurtful thing. So again, I have repeatedly asked Invenergy to have public meetings, so it can be discussed in public, and they refuse to have such.
So, and just maybe if I asked this and if I did, but so why did Invenergy sue? Why do I have the
Right.
complaint here? It's 11 pages, and they're asking for a declaratory judgment that the county not be that the court rule that they run a declaratory judgment that the ordinance is arbitrary, capricious, unreasonable, and contrary to public policy, and that they want the court to rule that they have vested rights. And so. But is it just about the money? They're angling to collect the tax credits. What's at root? What's fundamentally at stake here?
Well, I think too, as you mentioned, there's a number of these suits going on, so I think they're trying to make a statement here with us, perhaps. That might be part of it. Hold us up as an example, see here what we did. Again, we're a county of 7,400 people. We got 2 stoplights in this county, people. We're a small rural community. So it's a matter of them intimidating us and threatening us. I think they're kind of seeing the domino effect of where more and more of these counties are going up against these big corporations. So,
And is it that simple? Is this intimidation?
I don't know. I guess that would be a question for them. What they want is they don't want to have to follow the due process. They have recommended that that Worth County supervisors sign a road use agreement. And in that road use agreement, they have said, we'll add some extra things in there to give you these protections that you want. We will add a 1,500-foot setback from residences. We will give you 50 dBA sound level. Okay. So
Is that what they're in favor of? Because that wasn't clear in the lawsuit. And it was one of the questions I put to Invenergy. And the noise issue is one that I think is particularly important because Invenergy has already been sued on that issue.
Right.
And NextEra and other companies, this is the noise pollution issue is the one that, frankly, for me, is the issue
Yes.
that having dealt with noise pollution in my own home and because it
Yes.
was a long story, but that this is the one the wind industry has been downplaying for more than a decade, but that has been proven over and over and over again.
I agree.
So what were the noise limits that there are on the pending restrictions or the pending ordinance? Because
Okay.
that ordinance is pending in Worth County now, right? Is that
Right.
correct?
Right. There is a draft ordinance. So we only have zoning in 3 townships of our county. Okay. We're only partially zoned. And the reason they're in those 3 townships is because Interstate 35 goes through those 3 townships. And so it was a requirement way back then. So that's important to know. As far as the wind ordinance that was developed, a great job was done by our Planning and Zoning Commission. They looked at 38 other counties' ordinances in Iowa. They talked to the Farm Bureau, to the public health, our county conservation, our county engineer. They talked to Invenergy, okay? They put in hundreds of hours in putting together this awesome wind ordinance. They have rationale behind all of their points on it. One of them is sound. And we, as the group of crows, the concerned residents of Worth and Winnebago, actually hired an acoustician. And don't ask me his name because I don't have it on the top of my head right now. But we actually hired an acoustician to address that. And it's listed in 3 different decibel filters. Sound is a very, very complex thing. And to just say dBA is not appropriate.
It's not enough. Yeah.
It is not enough. So we hired an acoustician. We have great sound language, and you would have to refer to that. And we have the rationale all behind that. So when they did the ordinance, they looked at it in especially 3 different sections. Instead of lumping everything together into setback, like here's your setback, they looked at sound, setback, and shadow flicker separately. Okay, along with a whole other host of things, but those were the 3 main things. But by looking at those 3 things separately, and we didn't put in a setback distance to take care of sound. We treated sound as sound, so that they have to meet sound levels. Right. Okay, but again, a very complex thing, and you can't just say 50 dBA. That's. Talk to Punch or James or any of them.
Averaged over 24 hours or something is meaningless because it can be much higher than that or much lower. Exactly. But the language that they use in the lawsuit here, it says they're objecting to the proposed requirements include numerous unreasonable new restrictions, including but not limited to, and one of them is sound standards that would unrealistically require the wind project to have sounds lower than the levels of common everyday sounds. And then a standard unprecedented in Iowa of 0 shadow flicker at the property line of an adjoining property that would completely prevent wind turbine construction. So it's clear that the ordinance that has been drafted but not adopted yet, is that right? It hasn't been adopted?
That is correct. So it was
decided. They're reading the proposed language and saying, hey, this is really this boxes us out, and so they're trying to effectively force their way in. Well, so but I have to ask this question because it's the one right on the top of my head. If the oil and gas industry were acting like this, would it be getting more news coverage?
Definitely.
So why isn't this getting more news coverage? Yeah, and what do you think of the big media outlets that have so far been covering this issue, and in particular, what you saw, I think I sent it to you with National Public Radio a few months ago. What do you think about what their coverage has? What does it look like to you?
Well, I think it's horrid, and it's all virtue signaling, and they see what they want to see, and they don't. Is it hard, like after you've pushed something for so long, you've pushed it and pushed it and pushed it and believed in it, isn't it hard to say I was wrong? So.
And you think it's that simple, that this belief in renewables has been so widespread and so inculcated, or been so widespread that now people have.
It's like a religion. Yeah, it's like some people are just, it's like they're so, it's their religion. They're just so
wedded to the idea of that renewables are good, right, or renewables are green.
Right.
So, but if ExxonMobil was acting like Invenergy, what would the news coverage look like?
Well, it would be front and center, and it would be the big bad Exxon people. They would be the monster.
But because it's Invenergy and it's wind, it gets ignored?
And maybe too, because it's Iowa, because we're I know I'm using a trite expression, but flyover country. And I really think a lot of people don't, it's a very complex, topic. A lot of people, they drive by these things at 70, 80 miles an hour on the interstate. I don't think they really dig into it and learn about it. And I was one of those people, a lot of people just don't really know everything about it.
And the more they know, the less they're going to like it.
Right.
That was
Right.
interesting you say that, because that was one of the findings, and I wrote about this in National Review now, something like 10 years ago. There was a guy out of I think it was University of Maryland, who'd done an analysis of public perceptions, and he said, and I was on the call and the webinar, and he said, yeah, the more people know about the wind industry, the less they like it. I mean, I was slack-jawed. I mean, it was truly was amazing.
That's exactly right.
So just a quick station break. My guest is Julie Kuntz. She is a resident of Grafton, Iowa, which is in Worth County. She is part of a group called Concerned Residents of Worth and Winnebago Counties, Iowa. That's a Facebook page, and you can find them on Facebook. They also have a GoFundMe page, the Worth County, Iowa Citizens Legal Fund. So if you're inclined to donate, they are facing some legal battles with Invenergy, which is a very wealthy company that is trying to force wind turbines into into Worth County. One of the things that's interesting, as I say that, Julie, is that in Madison County, Mid-American filed a lawsuit against the Board of Supervisors, and I wrote about it in Forbes and said that they were trying to intimidate the Board of Supervisors, and the company objected to that word. They just said, "Oh, we're not trying to intimidate." And I thought, well, what else would it be? Then why are you lost? Why file a lawsuit if the objective is not intimidation?
I agree. So yeah, the Invenergy they don't want to follow the lawful, regulation of industrial wind. They want to, so 40% of the project, of this worthwhile project up in the north west part of the county, is in land that is zoned, is in townships that is zoned, 40% of it. So,
and what are those townships where part of it would be located?
That would be Brookfield, and I can't remember the other one. I can't remember the other name of that other township. Anyway, these turbines don't fit into the zoning ordinance. They would have to get a special use permit.
Here it is: Heartland, Brookfield, and Danville.
So not Danville, the first two.
Oh, okay.
Hartfield, okay.
But the county adopted a zoning ordinance. Well, that's in 2009. But okay, sorry, I'm sorry.
So they are zoned, and
Right.
so they have to get a special use permit there. Well, Invenergy doesn't want to do that. They just want this road use agreement, which would say, okay, we don't even have to get the special use permit for those two townships. Okay. Also, I want to add that in the ordinance that we were talking about, this well-written ordinance that has is out there, pending.
When might the ordinance be voted on, by the way?
So first, what they did is it was decided that we needed county-wide zoning. Okay. So, right, that's what we're doing right now, is getting county-wide zoning over all of the townships.
For wind energy conversion systems,
in general,
okay.
County-wide zoning, period. Okay, just a county-wide zoning, and then look at the wind ordinance. So, and that is all happening right now. The public hearings are going to be going on for the zoning. We actually took our moratorium and put it out just a few more weeks so that we could get this planning and this zoning for the entire county done. And then we will do the wind ordinance. And I want to mention, I think it's important to know on that wind ordinance that Invenergy is saying is, going to block them out. It is not, because in the ordinance, it is written that the company can get waivers from people. So what it does, it gives people, small landowners, 2 acres, 10 acres, 20 acres, it gives them some rights. So that the company has to go to them and get them to sign off, to agree to the effects,
right.
Give them some compensation, as opposed to just the big landowners.
Right.
So there is a waiver process.
And that's one of the other big friction points, right? Between in these battles that I've heard about. It's the absentee landowners versus the residents. And it's also the smaller landholders against the larger landholders. And so that the larger landholders can then, get a lease and get money from these wind projects, and their neighbors get no money and yet have to live with the consequences. Right?
Exactly.
So there's there are a lot of different power dynamics playing out here, right? Between the big business and small county and small rural counties, but it's also the bigger landowners versus the small landowners, and the absentee landowners versus the residents, right? So there's a lot of different dynamics here, but I guess the question that is we're talking, Julie, and you made it clear when we met in Albert Lea, Minnesota, some months ago. You're committed to this. Why? And I can tell, and anger motivates a lot of my work. But what motivates you? Why are you so motivated on this? Why are you?
So I'm coming across as angry. That's what you're saying, Robert?
That's well. You can be pissed off and have a smile on your face, right? But
I'm passionate. I am passionate.
And
about
why?
This.
What motivates you on this? What motivates you so? What makes you so passionate about it?
I think a lot of it is the way that I have seen Invenergy do their business.
And how would you describe it, if you could, in a couple words?
I had a good friend that said at a public hearing that said, this is not a company that you want to do business with. This is not a company you want your neighbor doing business with. So I have personal knowledge of Invenergy going to a small acreage owner and telling him that neighboring land has all been signed up. That big farmer, he signed all this up. So here's this good neighbor agreement, which is something they like to get landowners to sign and then give them, a pittance amount of money. But in so doing, they give up all rights, legal recourse if there are problems. They said, you might as well sign this because all this land's going to be full of turbines. Well, I knew the neighboring landowner. I said, you're kidding. He signed up. I didn't know that. Let's give him a call. I signed up. I called the neighboring landowner. He hadn't talked to him. When they had come, he'd been busy cleaning out a bin. He hadn't signed up. So there's a lot of, nefarious tactics. It's been very concerning. As I mentioned, with our older people, they were offered, if they would sign up at a certain time, like $1,000 bonus if they signed up right away. I don't think that's fair and good. I don't think it's ethical to kind of push somebody to sign up that way. These are leases on land. These are easement agreements that are going to last decades and decades, up to 50 years. Mm. So I don't appreciate the way that in this case, Invenergy has done their business. And the more I learned about wind energy, it does not make sense for our grid. And then talking about our grid, I wanted to tell you this. I was at a local implement dealer who sells lawnmowers and all that kind of stuff, and he sells generators.
Farm implements, right?
Yeah. So, but he sells. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So he has had to buy a whiteboard to put on there all the back orders for generators that he has.
Is this in Mason County or in Mason City?
Mason City. This is in Mason City. Yes.
Demand for generators is through the roof. I know this. I've written about it. Generac, a friend of mine in Houston, she ordered her generator last December, and she has to wait a year. They have a year-long waiting list.
Right. And it's on our news all the time, about the potential brownouts and blackouts, and the MISO talked about how we're going to be, deficient because of all of that. So I think once that starts happening, maybe then we'll see a change. Maybe then we'll see.
So what's next then? Has the county responded to the lawsuit yet? It's only been this is May 13th. We're at June 3rd. So I guess they have 30 days or something to reply. Have you been in touch with the county attorney? What's the county's response so far?
So the county has contacted their liability insurance, who has hired a law firm out of Des Moines. So they will be handling this. Our planning and zoning commissioner is very sharp on all of this, and he has all of the documents and all the data, a rebuttal, if you will, to Invenergy's petition. So I think he will be working. That's what we're going to be using the legal defense fund for, to help shore up the county's response.
So this is the private group, the Concerned Citizens of Worth in Winnebago. You're using the money that you raised through GoFundMe to help the county legal team in their effort.
Correct.
Have you thought about suing Invenergy directly, or do you have a claim? I don't know whether that's a possibility or not, but I know in Dane County, Wisconsin, I just got the clip the other day. There's a project called Koshkokong Solar. Local groups up there have been contacting me about it, and it was approved by the Public Utility Commission in Wisconsin. But the local group just sued the state over the permit that was given to that solar project that is being pushed by Invenergy. So there's a lot of litigation happening here. But would citizens in Worth County have a case against Invenergy?
I don't know. And when you're dealing with trying to sue Invenergy and their pockets are so deep, and, I think it'd be a matter of who could outlast who, perhaps. I'm not sure.
Right.
I did want to mention when you said that up there in Wisconsin, how they got the permit from their utility board, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Iowa is a little bit unique. According to Iowa Code 476A, any energy generating facilities less than 25 megawatts at a single gathering site do not have to go through the Iowa Utilities Board. Okay.
Okay.
That's why, again, it all falls onto the supervisors. So this was never approved by the Iowa Utilities Board. It doesn't have to have, any oversight. The Iowa DNR has no regulatory capacity. They can make recommendations, but they do not have any regulatory capacity. We did get a hold of the DNR report on this worthwhile project. It seems that Invenergy, gets this report, but then they do their, quote, own high-level desktop review. And they really don't follow the Iowa DNR guidelines or recommendations whatsoever. The Iowa DNR has active eagle nests of 6 eagle nests in this project area. According to Invenergy, there's only 2. I thought you might not like to know that, as far as being the bird lover you are.
Well, okay. Well, now you're making me mad.
Yeah, I can give you this whole report. It's quite interesting. Yeah.
Because NextEra Energy was prosecuted under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, of course, by the Department of Justice in April. They pled guilty to 3 misdemeanor violations. They should have been charged of felony violations of the Golden Bald and Eagle Protection Act. They weren't, or the Bald and Golden Eagle Protection Act. They weren't. But they put that project right in the middle of known eagle habitat.
This is. There is no way that anything, and in fact, I think it's, how many turbines? So the Iowa DNR used strong language saying they strongly recommended against, there were 2 paragraphs that they said they strongly recommended against any turbines in several sites. And I believe it's 24 out of the 56 turbines, if I recall, are smack dab in these areas where the Iowa DNR recommended no turbines.
So, and is that the number, the 56 turbines that Invenergy wants to put in Worth County? Is that right?
We don't know for sure. That keeps changing and morphing, as does the project area. So even as late as September of 2021, the Invenergy rep could not tell us exactly how many turbines or specifically what kind of turbines were going to be put up. On that April 12th, 2021 date, when that temporary moratorium was put into place, that was the first time ever that Invenergy officially was represented at a Board of Supervisors meeting. Okay?
So all before this, they were working behind the scenes and no official
Correct.
Agenda items or anything regarding a project
Correct.
that would cover several thousand acres?
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I think at one time, were they saying 20,000 acres? But that again but they just sign up everybody. They sign up everybody they can. And now they've got people signed up. They continue to sign up people even during the moratorium. Our planning and zoning asked for them to give comment on the proposed ordinance, the draft ordinance. They refused because they said it did not pertain to them. So yeah, they're Invenergy. They're big. So
and
they're just doing whatever they want.
And they use nefarious tactics.
I see it as nefarious tactics. Yes.
So, is there have you done any kind of polling in the county for the this was a big issue in Madison County where I know Heather Stansel, the super board supervisor in Madison County,
Mm-hmm.
Heather Stansel, that they had done polling in the county to see what kind of level of support the project had. They found overwhelming opposition. Have you done anything similar
Mm-hmm.
in Worth?
I have in my project area, I personally canvassed every landowner over 40 acres. And my friend Matt Helgeson also looked in the project area where he lives in Winnebago County, and our findings mirrored each other, where over 80% of the landowners' residents were opposed to this project.
Well, I
We haven't done
I
any
met
of.
Matt in Albert Lee, did I not?
You did.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
right.
Yep. Yep. So he's the Winnebago side of
He's
this.
a maybe mid-30s, early 40s, brown-haired guy.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember. Sure.
Yep. Yep. So he really did a lot of the work on the sound part of the wind ordinance. We were very thankful for him for doing that. So we haven't had any official polling, but what I would tell you is the biggest statement is how these pro-wind supervisors have all not been reelected. Okay.
Well, this is what was the same. This is the same that I've heard in other counties across the country, but it's in Madison County. That was clearly the case that in New York State as well, right? Where
Right.
the pro supervisors were either drummed out or ran for reelection and got soundly defeated. So you've elected supervisors that are opposed to wind projects in Worth County because the vote on the moratorium was 2-1, right?
Yeah, I can't say that they were opposed to wind projects. They will tell you they are not anti-wind, but they are for reasonable regulations. And
Okay.
this ordinance that we have it's like I say, it's got all the rationale, it's got all and it's got the waivers on there. So it puts it in the hand of the developer to do the siting, to do the work, to speak to all of the landowners, to make it fair for everyone. So because everybody's got property rights, whether you've got, 10,000 acres or 10 acres.
So what's next for you then on this fight? I mean, you've given us the background for the county's involvement and the county's adoption of the new ordinance, countywide zoning. But the zoning comes before, I guess, the ordinance.
Right.
Then is that so?
That's correct.
Give me an idea in terms of how long, what this time frame is.
So they're doing the public hearings. You've got to put it in the paper and all of that for the countywide zoning. I believe that will be done by July. I'm thinking that a decision one way or the other on the ordinance will be done. I'm kind of guessing here, but I'm saying by September. Okay.
Okay.
The road use agreement that was brought up for a motion on May 9th. This is the road use agreement that Invenergy said, here, we'll give you this. We'll throw you a 1,500 foot setback and 50 dBA and blah, blah, blah. So that failed on May 9th.
And they sued 4 days later.
And they sued 4 days later. Right, right. So everything's going pretty fast, but now we've got this new attorney from Des Moines. So he needs to get up to speed. And I don't know this guy. I would like it if a group of citizens could meet with him.
Because he's representing, but he is effectively working for the insurer who's insuring the county.
Correct.
So it's not exactly like he's working directly for the. I mean, it's a little bit of an arm's length deal, but you're still on the same team effectively. Is that a fair way to put it?
Correct. And I think it's important that he knows some of this background, and that he knows the passion that's going on here. So I'm hoping this attorney is passionate.
So a couple of last things, Julie, because we've been talking now for over 50 minutes, and I like to keep my podcast at an hour or so. So what are you reading? I mean, you obviously you're consumed with a lot of this, and you're busy. You're a professional in healthcare. Do you take time off? You read Tom Clancy novels. What's on the top of your reading list these days?
So right now I'm reading the American Diabetes Association guidelines.
See, I was going
I'm
to
reading.
say, is it going to be regulatory statutes? Because Heather Stansel, the board supervisor in Madison County, said, "Yeah, I read a lot of public documents. I don't read
Yeah,
novels." But anyway, so the
yeah,
American
and
diabetes documents.
yeah, and a lot on vested rights right now. And I've got Michael Schellenberg's Apocalypse Never on my nightstand.
Hmm.
But I do have in like my spare time, I like I'm getting back into hooking rugs.
Aha,
I'm a rug hooker. So there you go.
not quilts.
No, I have quilted, but I prefer rug hooking. So
And why is that? I'm just curious. What? Because I.
because you don't need a sewing machine. It's much, yeah, and it's something my mom taught me how to do, and it's I really enjoy the wool and the
But not a.
the
But you're not
texture
a.
and the pattern.
But you're not a knitter then.
I'm not a knitter. Nope, this is rug hooking. Yeah,
Yeah. No, I'm familiar
yeah,
with what it is, but I'm just, there are these crafts that have different
yeah.
attractions to them. And my wife does a little sewing, but only a little. But she's also a
Hmm.
potter and does all these other things that
Oh,
are.
really?
Yes. She's quite artistic and a photographer and just generally wonderful because, well, we're married 36 years now. This in June 7th. So anyway, so
Congratulations.
thank you. So, what gives you hope, Julie? If you've listened to the podcast, I also ask people what gives you hope. So you're up against a very big company that is clearly not. It doesn't seem to be too interested in playing what a lot of people would consider cards up or playing fair. What gives you hope?
So, um, I have faith. So whatever will be, will be. All will be well. So prayer helps. You know, just if the wind turbines get put up, it will be okay. It all will be well. God will take care of us all. So it's the people I work with on this, our planning and zoning, the whole commission, the great job they've done, showing all the people that care, our supervisors, all three of them that put time and effort and care into this. I guess that gives me hope. No matter the outcome, all will be well.
Well, that's a good place to stop. So we'll stop there. My guest has been Julie Kuntz, the indomitable Julie Kuntz. She is a resident of Grafton, Iowa, and a member of Concerned Residents of Worth and Winnebago counties. You can find out more about them on Facebook. Again, it's Concerned Residents of Worth and Winnebago counties. Oh, I have to ask you, I'm sorry, I know I said it was the last question, but a lot of the media coverage that I've seen, and this seems like it's been very carefully engineered, is these reporters from big media outlets saying, oh, these anti-renewable crowd, they're using Facebook and spreading misinformation. Have you seen this?
Oh, definitely.
What do you
Yeah.
think of that? It was one of the questions I had down here. I have to ask it because I mentioned Facebook. What the hell? Why are they? Oh, they're using Facebook for misinformation. The NPR reporter even contacted Facebook and said, "Are you aware of this? What do you think of
Why
this?"
doesn't the NPR reporter then contact me? Why doesn't she come contact and I asked her to contact me and she did not.
Julia,
So
you contacted Julia Simon.
yes, yes. So then why aren't they contacting us? Facebook is a tool. I was not even on Facebook before all of this stuff started, but it's a tool. And you can get misinformation anywhere, whether it's the mainstream media or Facebook. So
But it's a relatively easy way for people like you to spread information and organize.
you bet. Exactly. Exactly. And yes, Julia Symes, give me a call.
Well, she might be listening to this podcast. I rather doubt it, but it's possible. Well, again, my guest has been Julie Kuntz. She's a member of the Concerned Residents of Worth and Winnebago counties. You can find her on Facebook. You can also, if you're inclined, help them with their legal fight against Invenergy on their GoFundMe page, the Worth County, Iowa Citizens Legal Fund. Julie, thanks a million for being on the Power Hungry podcast.
Thank you, Robert.
And all you in podcast land, tune in for the next episode of this podcast. It's going to be just as good as this one, but probably not much better. Until then, see ya.